Okay, let's talk about practice test E. We'll do this the same way we did practice test D. I'll walk through all of them, but real quick, I'll stop at 8 or 10 and talk about them, and then I'll show you how to score it. All right, passage 1. Number 1 is C. Number 2, I did want to talk about this. See my little note? I highlighted it. That helps me. Number 2, what did I want to talk about? Oh, there are two things that you need to know. You need to know how a dash works, whether or not it works in this situation. The alternative to the dash in this situation would be the period. But then, so you look at G and think, oh, there's a period. But there's a different form of there. So they're also testing your knowledge of the usage. So they're testing usage of there, and there, and usage of a dash. Okay, number 3 is D. Number 4 is H. 5 is B. 6, H. You know, we can do this quicker since we're not talking about them. There we go. Okay, I'll give you a chance to get caught up if you're checking your paper off. You can always pause me, too, to get caught up. And these will all be posted on the same screen, so you can pause at any time. In fact, I know I'm not going to be talking about one until, I think, the next passage. Okay, so there's the rest of passage 1. I do want to talk about a couple in passage 2, these next two, 17 and 18. So stop your checking and look at that page. 17 and 18, I just wanted to point out that sometimes you have these situations where an answer will depend on a subsequent answer. So you kind of had to think about both of these at the same time, because the sentence, after traveling into the country, my friend Sander for the 3rd time without taking my camera out of its case, you need the with in there, for one. And then also, you need to get rid of the thus. This needs to be a long intro clause with a comma after it and then the word I. That's the only way it works. So in order to make that whole passage work, you've got to get 17 and 18 correct. Okay, 19's A, 20, 21, 22, 23. Let's talk about 23. Oh, I didn't make it yellow. Oh well. This is called the subjunctive mood. We've never talked about it, and you won't talk about it probably, again, unless you take a higher level language course. Then you probably would. And in English, we just don't talk about it much. And this is the thing where if it either sounds right in your ear and you don't have to worry about it, and if it doesn't sound right, it's really hard to explain. But if you'll notice, I'm going to explain it anyway. 23, we have feels, we have feel, feeling, and feels. Those are our choices. And they all deal, those are the verbs, and they all deal with the subject photographer, which is a singular subject. Well, you would think photographer should go with feels with an S, because those are both singular. That's what I've been teaching you all along. In the subjunctive mood, which just means that it's contrary to fact. So it reads like, the second rule requires that the photographer not feel, so the answer is B, not feel self-conscious about looking aimless. So the photographer, and the reason we say it's contrary to fact is because the photographer is not feeling anything. It's just that the rule requires that he not feel a certain way. So it's like if something were not true, but suppose it was. For example, if I say, if I were taller, I'd play basketball. I would never say I were. That's the only situation where I would put the verb were with the subject I, and yet it sounds perfectly fine to most well-read people, right? If I were taller, if I were taller. You may say if I was taller. It's wrong. You need to say if I were taller, because I'm not taller. I'm only 5'9". But if I were, I'd play basketball. Okay, it's contrary to fact. It's a weird sort of mood where we use just different forms of the verb to communicate the meaning. Okay, when you have Latin or Spanish or French someday, your teacher may talk to you about the subjunctive mood. And you can at least say that you've heard of it before. Okay, let's fly through the rest of passage 2. Here they are, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31. Okay, passage 3. 32 is H, 33B, 34H. Okay, I want to talk about not all of these, but I just want you to look at this page from 35 down to 42. This is a good example of what the ACT likes to do in a general sense, and it's a good thing to keep in mind when you're taking the test. Look at 35. Now, whatever your answer is, you can check these when we're done. You can pause it and check them. I want you to look at the actual choices on the page. The correct answer in 35 is D. In 36, it's J. In 37, it's D. In all three of those, the correct answer is the shortest answer. Okay, that's not entirely coincidental. Now, you don't want to make that a rule, obviously, because you won't get a very good ACT score if you simply choose the shortest one. But I want you to think about what the ACT folks are doing. Okay, now look all the way at the bottom. 42, just glancing at it, what do you think the correct answer is? Yeah, it's J. Meant to honor. This is one of the focus of the rhetoric type questions. They want you to recognize when language is being too wordy. Unnecessary words, phrases that don't do anything but kind of fluff up the sentence. We want to avoid them. So often the case is the choice that is shortest and clearest is the correct answer. We've seen this a lot, but I want to drive it home again so you don't forget this. Okay. Moving on. I don't think I have anything left in this one, so whoops. Okay, let's stop at 4. There's the rest of passage 3. Passage 4, 46. I've jumped ahead. Pages were stuck together. 47, D. 48, J. 49, D. No, C, sorry. 50, H. Guys, if any of these need more explanation, I mean, need any explanation at all, because I've explained most of them, email me or call me. We can talk them through if something is unclear. Okay, let's stop at 52. Okay, so look at the choices in 52. The more uniquer, hopefully you catch that right away. Unique, the most unique, most unique. Now, there are two choices, a no change and the J. Just sort of mess with the comma, right? They move the comma around. That sometimes tricks people into picking it. This is weird. This item is unique because what's going on here is you have a word that can, by its own definition, it cannot be modified by something else. You can't put a word like most or more on the adjective unique. Now with some adjectives on a spectrum, they can be in different forms. They can be in comparative or superlative forms, right? The word tall, I just used it as an example. I can be taller than someone else. If there are 3 of us standing there, one of us may be the tallest. You can't do that with unique. Unique means one of a kind. So nobody can be more unique than someone else, right? If you're comparing them in the same situation under the same conditions, then you need a different word, right? If you're talking about basketball players, you got to narrow it down more. You can't just say that this basketball player is more unique. Maybe he's more talented, maybe he's taller, maybe he's got a better free throw, maybe he's a better ball handler, but you can't use unique in that way. Okay. Let's go down to 56. There's 53, 54, 55, 56. We have whether or not, and then one of the choices is omit the underlined portion, so we're left with whether. We haven't talked about this. When do you use whether by itself, and when do you use whether or not? A lot of people just do it interchangeably. It's an informal thing. You could do it, and it wouldn't matter, but there is logic here. Notice if you keep reading. Let's read it as it is, as a no change. Whether or not grooms draws from urban or regional experiences. Let's stop there. What we're doing, if we read it that way, or write it that way, is we're being redundant. We're repeating something. The word or shows up in both forms. Whether or not gives us a choice of things. And then as you read further, we have another choice of things, urban or regional experiences. You don't need to do it twice. So if the sentence is constructed so that there is a choice later, like in this case, urban or regional experiences, then drop the or not. If the choice is implied that it either is or it isn't, whether or not I go to the store, blah, 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 then you can use whether or not. There you go. You probably not see that in the ACT. I think this is the only time I've ever seen that particular usage rule. 57 is B, 58J, 59C, 60. You know what? We might just be good to the very end. Actually, I think I want to talk about the very last one. So I'm just going to fly through these, stop the video and check them if you need to, and we'll stop at 75. And we're not going to talk about 75, but I'm wondering if you notice that there's a particular type of question that was left completely out of this test. In every other full test that we've looked at, I guess we've only looked at one, a lot of the ACT Q sets have this particular kind of question that doesn't show up here. The sequence question, right, where you had to pick the order of the paragraphs, or where, if you're going to move stuff around, and for some reason they just don't do it for this one. I don't know that I've ever done a test before that didn't have any of those kinds of questions at all. There you go. Okay, so there's your score, or your answers. So figure out your raw score, how many you got correct out of 75, and we'll look at the scale just like we did last time. Here it is. It goes all the way from a score of 1 to a score of 36. So figure out where you fall. Notice there is no 34 or 35. So that last point, if you went from a 74 to a 75, you got 3 extra points on your ACT. Not bad. Okay, once you've got that figured out, send it to me, and you can move on to the next item in the class set for this week. Thanks, guys.